Welcome. Today we'll talk about the concept of daily indignities. Think back to your life experiences and you'll recall that we all, at some point in time, have undergone experiences where we were treated differently because of our physical differences in other such characteristics. For example, I have genetic nystagmus in my eyes. My eyes move at times, so kids used to call me offensive names at times. While we all have experienced unfair treatment at one time or another, we will see that some individuals in society may have been exposed to this type of treatment on a more consistent basis because of their physical traits or other characteristics. In fact, some individuals may experience unfair treatment on a daily basis. This unfair treatment is called daily indignities, and we'll talk about some of these examples and the concept in general. Daily indignities are those negative things that individuals do or say to or about one another on a continuous basis because of their biases and perceived differences. So these daily indignities are demonstrated in many different forms, and several documentaries have created examples that show some of these daily indignities or even discriminatory practices toward individuals because of their physical or perceived differences. These documentaries tend to depict various forms of discrimination or daily indignities in actual work and also in daily life situations. Typically, they would have two people called testers, which are used in these documentaries. They're equal in all characteristics except the one chosen discriminatory one, like age, appearance, skin color, or even gender, to distinguish him or her from the other individuals, or sometimes known as the control group. Usually, testers are sent to a location to check on a public response to a diversity characteristics in real life situations, such as when you're applying for a job, when you're buying a car, or even making a major purchase or renting an apartment, for example, or even shopping at the local retail store. One of these documentaries is called The Ugly Truth. The Ugly Truth documentary depicts discrimination based on appearance or how a person looks. In one instance, two actors were placed as defendants in a separate court cases. The jurors or the jury in general was unaware that the defendants were actors. One defendant was considered to be very attractive by general society, while the other actor was made up to be less attractive. In both cases, the defendants were not required to speak. The cases ended up with the attractive defendant being found innocent and the less attractive defendant being found guilty. When the jurors were interviewed, they all actually admitted that the attractive defendant looked innocent and appeared to be honest. These assumptions are supported by factual data as well. In real-life situations, we find that attractive defendants are more likely to be found not guilty, or they tend to receive less severe penalties than defendants who are perceived to be less attractive by society standards of appearance or what we consider to be attractive. In another setting, elementary school children were the target audience. In this case, two teachers were sent in separately to present identical information and teach this content to the young children. One teacher was considered to be attractive, while the other one was considered less attractive and made up that way. When the learning experience was complete, the students were asked to rate these two teachers. So what do you think was the outcome? You guessed it. The attractive teacher was considered more intelligent and the overall best teacher. Another documentary is called The Fair Sex, which focused on gender. The Fair Sex documentary depicts discrimination based on whether a person is a male or a female, and the focus is on, obviously, gender. So a female and a male tester are placed in various but identical situations. However, the results appear to be very, very different. For employment situations, when they both applied for similar job opportunities, the female tester was often offered secretarial positions, while the male was offered better paying positions, including entry-level management opportunities. So the men were often encouraged to go toward management, while females were not encouraged as such. This all occurred with the female tester having better work qualifications than the male tester. When buying a car, the female tester was not allowed to drive the car off the premises. However, the male tester was given the keys and told that he can drive the car for a test drive. The female tester was quoted higher price than the male for the exact same car. In fact, the man's starting price was $500 less than the female tester's final price. You see a big disparity here in terms of what women pay for a car versus what men pay because of discriminatory practices. Many companies are changing their policies and process to avoid and in some cases eliminate gender discrimination. For example, some corporations have created the one price for all strategy in automobile dealerships, where the focus has been on serving the customer as opposed to getting a higher price or higher commission, which is a good strategy. Another documentary is called True Colors. The True Colors documentary depicts discrimination based on skin color, where I am brown, white, black, or somewhere in between. In this case, the person of color was followed in a music store when he declined help and was not offered help in a shoe store. The clerk in the shoe store ignored the tester for 5 minutes. However, both stores promptly offered help to the Caucasian tester and left him alone when he declined. So the Caucasian tester was not followed. You could see that the testers were in the stores at the same time. In another scenario, the Caucasian individual was provided a master key to view apartments for which the person of color was told they were rented. You cannot ignore these actual scenarios or documentaries because you see it through your own eyes, even if you're not experiencing it on a personal level. The testers were quoted different prices, different down payments, and even different financing rate by the same salesperson on the same car on the same day. The African American tester had higher prices and rates quoted. Studies indicate that as a group, African Americans pay about 5 to 12% more for used automobiles than Caucasians. That's a huge price disparity in discriminatory practice that should not happen in today's environment. In another scenario, a Caucasian tester was courteously offered help at an employment agency while the African American tester was treated rudely and he was told that he would be watched closely. A final documentary we'll talk about today is called the Asian Attitude documentary. The Asian Attitude documentary focused on discrimination based on age as well as attitude. In this documentary, a single male tester assumes 2 different identities. So with the help of some Hollywood makeup artist, he's made up to be a 27-year-old candidate named Joseph and also a 53-year-old candidate named Michael seeking employment. So in other words, it's the same person who goes to 2 different places using 2 different identities to see how they respond to him. Michael, the older tester, possesses slightly better job qualifications than Joseph, the younger candidate. They enter into identical employment opportunity situations, however, with different results. The 27-year-old tester consistently received various employment offers, even though the 53-year-old tester possessed better qualifications for these jobs. In one instance, the older tester is told during the interview, "This is a young boy's game." This is a young boy's game. In other words, what are you doing? This job is not for you. When the employers were confronted and asked to explain these results, they could not offer any logical or rational explanation as to why the younger tester was consistently offered the employment opportunity over the older candidate. So age discrimination is very much prevalent in our society. Now we have to note that some of these decisions may be attributed to the myth that older workers get sick more often. They're not committed as much as the younger people, and the older workers will not stay with the company as long. Once again, facts prove that these myths are all false. Based on my 30 years of work experience in the retail world and management experience, I can tell you that older workers tend to be much more dependable than some younger employees. They also tend to be very mature, more experienced. They tend to be loyal, honest, quality focused. They're customer oriented, and oftentimes they're skilled in positive interpersonal relationships. So again, we need to make sure we do not discriminate based on any of these traits that have nothing to do with qualified individuals in doing the job. Data shows that age discrimination is such a prevalent part of the American society that it is even more difficult to detect than either racial or gender discrimination. It is also a fact that older workers, those who are over the age of 40, usually require about 64% more time to get employment than their younger counterparts. We shouldn't discriminate against older workers or younger workers. We should hire people based on qualification. It should also be mentioned that discrimination did not occur every time in these documentaries. Some of the discrimination might have been unintentional, and it is also possible that some of the discriminatory practices may have occurred because of other reasons or characteristics, not necessarily the trait or the characteristic that was being tested during the process. Nonetheless, these forms of discrimination, including gender, race, appearance, skin color, and age, are present and possibly widespread in our workplace. We need to make sure it doesn't happen to our colleagues, to ourselves, or to our departments and organizations. Patterns of these types of discrimination could cause the company major losses in lawsuits, not to mention people will leave. You can make sure that such discrimination practices do not happen to you or, again, to your workplace in order for you to retain the best qualified individuals in your department. As a manager, always aim to be an inclusive professional and a good leader that retains qualified individuals regardless of their gender, race, or ethnicity. Good luck.